You are watching the one and only Nutnfancy project. As you know, often imitated, never duplicated. This will be one of my fixed blade knife reviews. And as you're watching right now, I've done a fair amount of testing on this knife. At least as much as I had time for, energy for, and in total honesty, interest for. Now don't get me wrong, the knife is excellent. But to answer that last part, interest for, we got to leap right into POU discussion. Philosophy of use. What's the knife intended to do? What it's designed for? Let's go to the name. It is, of course, as you've seen in the title, the Tops Brothers of Bushcraft Fieldcraft Fixed Blade. There's your answer. It is a specifically built bushcrafting tool. Purpose-built to bushcraft. And as TMPers know, I'm not a bushcrafter. And I never pretend to be something I'm not in the Nutnfancy project. Now for this review, I very well could have pretended, gone out and done all the bushcrafting things, drilled with a knife, carved with it, made shelters, traps, all the things that bushcrafters do. But I'm not one of those guys. I'm a backpacker, I'm an outdoorsman, at times I'm a survivalist. That's a review you're going to get on this knife. That perspective. So if you're looking for specific bushcrafting data points in this Nutnfancy review, this video is probably going to suck for you. There's your warning. I can't do it. I'm just genuine. I got too many other knives to test, too many other guns to shoot. What I will give you is this, is a straightforward, honest, no BS data point on the knife's strengths and its weaknesses from my perspective. Not necessarily a bushcrafting perspective. That's what I mean, interest for. Because honestly, to give it a full-on bushcrafting test, that's probably a 2-day venture with one knife. You know, to drill with it again, to carve with it, fuzz sticks, making utensils, all the necessities of life, which is awesome. Maybe sometime I will do that. Just not yet. So it's a bushcrafter's tool, and it is specifically built, from my understanding, which is totally imperfect, from a group of experienced bushcrafters. The size of the knife, the weight of the knife, the handle, the grind, the special features, the sheath, all came about through a lot of thought through Brothers of Bushcraft, is my understanding. Would it do a great job? We're talking POU. Would it do a great job at that Nutnfancy? Well, again, I'm not a bushcrafter, but I am a very experienced outdoorsman backpacker, and I do a lot of the same things they do, just not to the nth degree. In other words, making utensils and stuff like that. I don't do that. I bring those with me. I could if I wanted, don't get me wrong, but it's just a matter of TCE, time, calories, energy. I don't do that. I have no doubt the knife would perform in that function. No doubt at all. A bushcrafting tool. Now, from what I know, bushcrafting is its own community. They have their own forums, of which I don't know anything about. I'm saying it straight up. And I'm sure they have very specific things they love and hate about certain knives. And I'm sure, like any knife person, these discussions get very heated and controversial. So what is a perfect bushcrafting tool to one bushcrafter, to another would be ludicrous. I mean, welcome to the knife world, right? Welcome to the gun world, for that matter, because we see that everywhere. But from what I know, to do the things we've talked about, the specific bushcrafting tasks, I think the knife would excel at it. With a couple caveats. One of them I'm going to say right off, and that is you have a huge exposed carbon steel blade, 1095 variety, Rockwell 56 to 58, and it's not coated. I hope you're bushcrafting in a very dry environment, because in my high alpine environment, heck, even in the desert, this sucker's going to rust huge. You got to keep it oiled. Hey, but we don't like coating on our portion right here. In other words, they probably specifically did that so it would carve better. I get it. But remember my perspective that I'm coming from as an outdoorsman, as a backpacker. How about, that's the bushcrafting philosophy of use. Hope you liked it. Now comes my philosophy of use, and this is where I'll put the focus of this video. How about as a heavy-duty camp knife? This is why I say the knife is excellent, because it will excel at that if, and this is a big if, you are good with a weight, which is substantial at 13.8 ounces with a sheath, and I think the fire steel in the sheath. 10 ounces for the knife alone. For your reference, that is quite heavy for a what I think to be is a rather small knife, 4.6 inch blade. Now if we go again back to the BOB purpose of this knife, that's what most of these guys like. They don't like a big blade. They don't want a big old 8-inch, 7-inch blade because they're carving with it. They need it to be maneuverable, comfortable in hand, hour after hour. I get it. We get it. But from the perspective of a camp knife, an all-purpose survival tool, to me, a 4.6 inch blade at 13.8 ounces tempers my enthusiasm in that philosophy of use. Does that make sense? For instance, in the camp knife philosophy of use, I could put into use, how about this one? The Mora Bushcraft Triflex. That's a 5-ounce blade, and it's only $25. This, by the way, is about $105. Worth it, though. It's a quality blade. This is $25. Triflex carbon steel. I bet there's some discussions amongst the bushcrafters. Hey, these two knives, this will do everything that will do. How much batoning are you going to do in bushcrafting? I don't really know, to be honest with you. But for me, I'll do quite a bit because I'm doing fire preparation, at times shelter creation, at times trap making, at times. Which of these two knives in that philosophy of use would I use? I do like the weight and the substantialness of the BOB Fieldcraft. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, it is heavy, but once you get it in hand, that mass makes it, cut better, carve better. You don't have to use so much muscle, and it's a more comfortable extended use knife over a super lightweight 5-ounce Mora, for instance. By the way, with a Mora, like if you go look at my video series Moonscape, I freaking chop a tree down with a Mora. Okay, not chop it down, but I notch it out. I don't think it was this one. It might have been, this one. Mora Clipper 840G, 3.8 ounces. This is $15. Carbon steel. Great knife for the money. And the reason I throw these on the table isn't so much to talk about notching down trees, but to talk about a camp knife. This, to a backpacker, is going to make a lot more sense than that because, heck, 3.8 ounces, fixed blade. It's got the Scandi grind on it, so it will carve very well. Talk about an exposed knife. This is carbon steel on this one. Like you can see right there, it will rust like crazy if you don't take care of it. So the same criticism I level on this exposed edge, I can level at this, right? It's good steel though. The Mora's freaking rock. I think they float too. As a camp knife, food preparation, light kindling preparation, maybe going through some limbs. If I have to pack the blade up, I mean, you've seen it. This is a knife I took on Moonscape, or one of the Moras. Don't get me wrong, this thing will work very well. But if it's a man-portable system, I'm carrying it, especially if I have other things I'm carrying, not so much. Now, in the world of bushcraft, which is a fascinating world, by the way, they don't have so much. They're living very primitively. Okay, so to carry a 14-ounce knife to them, what else do they have? A freaking tin cup? Probably. That's their system. Weight's not that critical then, right? Because that's all you're carrying. So in that philosophy of use, going back to bushcrafting, it's excellent. Get it? That's all I'm going to say on POU. I think that pretty much covers it, except maybe tactical use, a fighting knife. We will find on the top there is outstanding jimping. I absolutely love it. There's a medium depth choil on it. It gives good traction, and I like it. I think you could absolutely use this in a defensive role. However, with its weight, its size, it's not going to be really fast in hand. It balances well, but not to get it into action. That mass that is used for bushcrafting and those wilderness chores, that thick blade, that 1095 blade, it's just going to be a little bit slow in hand. Feel is excellent, and we'll talk about the handle here in a second. How about 1095, Nutton? Do you like that steel still? I will say absolutely I do. 1095 is very proven. It's one of my favorite carbon steels along with spring steel 5160 variety, of which I'll show you a competitive option made out of that. It's excellent, and as I think, and as Tops puts it together in the BOB Fieldcraft, I think it approaches exceptional. We've seen a lot of exceptional 1095 blades here, right? My testing pretty much focuses on batoning for a couple reasons. One, it's time efficient for me, and two, it's a really good test to see if the knife is going to fail and to test the edge geometry. 4.6 inch blade, as you can see, upswept. And this, by the way, looks flat ground. It really isn't. It's kind of concave. I think some guys call it a Scandivex. Has a micro bevel at the end. Okay, and in batoning, I test that edge hard. I'll go through knots. I'll hit it into the dirt. Not intentionally, but I'm taking the blade into the dirt, as you see from the video. It is bound to hit rocks. And I will say this blade did quite well. And I would expect it to, because 1095 is a robust steel. It's forgiving. Sometimes when you get a stainless steel up there, not so much. It will chip out on you. Sometimes it will bend. Carbon steel just does a good job. I've been saying that ever since 2008 here in my reviews. You'll see some edge wear right here. It actually needs to be resharpened, of which I have not done yet. There's some microchips in there. Roughness. I think the edge is rolled right there. I'm not sure if that came through the dirt, if it happened when I'm hitting the log, a knot, or whatever. This is a good chance to check out the epoxy coating as well. I do like the epoxy coating a lot. It's durable. I've seen it on a lot of blades. We've seen it on the buck blades. It wears well, and it protects the blade, obviously. It will create more drag with your carving, knocking kindling down, or just batoning. You'll see I spray it with WD-40 to minimize drag on that. Would you like it to be completely coated, Nutn? It looks cool, let me tell you that. And again, I think going back to the bushcrafting application, that's why they didn't coat it. They want to have a low drag carving surface. So, I don't know. Whatever. You could easily coat this knife if you wanted to. How about the tip strength? I would say it's pretty awesome, actually. Look at that sucker. The thickness is pretty much awesome, as it should be. I mean, it's no surprise. You want a really strong knife, make it thick. No matter what material you're using. You can pry with it, chop with it. It's going to be much less prone to breakage, bending out there. Stuff I've been talking about in my survival knife reviews for like eons. And that'll take us to the handle. Incidentally, in the upper right, you will see a link that would be Blade HQ, and this is actually a Blade HQ Special Edition Black. Very cool looking knife. Like I said, it's just a good looking blade. The normal version, I believe, is Tan Canvas Micarta. There might be some other versions, and I'll roll a picture of the tan canvas. It's just excellent looking as well. The handle is a win on the BOB Fieldcraft, if you ask me. Let's look, for instance, at the size. And this is really important to me from an outdoor application, not necessarily bushcrafting. I don't like being crunched in the handle, so the handle ends here. I see that a lot in the Ontario Ranger series of knives, for instance. Another 10-9, actually that's a 5160 series of blades. Hate it when I'm like, you know, cramped on the handle. Not so much on BOB. Big handle, rounded too. Look at that. There's no hot spots. So BOB Tops did a great job. Just make sure that's focusing. Milling that canvas micarta, and actually it has traction on the side as well. You can take the slabs off. That is excellent. You have some torque screws there. There's your lanyard hole, nice and big. Put your 550 cord in. The handle's excellent. It's got some nice red liners in this version, and it's scalloped nicely. I shouldn't scallop, but shaped to fit the hand. Reversed would be like that if that's what you want. Kind of go back to tactical. Now this right here is interesting. This is actually a scallop fire notch that they put in here, and here comes some more Nutnfancy honesty. This is not something I'd ever use. It just isn't. I think it's meant, and I actually did try it, to be used with the integrated fire steel which comes with it, right? These are some magnesium support rods. There's the flint. And then you would take the fire scallop and just, I don't know if I can do this on camera that well, kind of like that. There goes a good one. So you got to really bear down on it. I find to use your fire steel, you need a really sharp edge, or at least a 90-degree perpendicular transition so you can bite into it. And then this part's coated, so it doesn't work that great because there's no bite into the flint. But that's what that's for. That's the intent, I think. And then this is a bow drill divot. Okay, so you put your bow in there, then you use your bearing block, and you would start a fire that way. Hey, Nutnfancy, why don't you go do that? No thanks. No, see, that goes back to TCE. For my application is what I'm talking about. In other words, what I like to do when I need a fire, usually I'm exhausted. I've hiked in. I don't have a lot of time before night falls. Before you know it, it's 10 degrees on a winter camp. I'm throwing down freaking trioxane. I'm not dicking around doing a fuzz stick or anything like that. Looks good on camera. It's impressive. But, dude, I just want a fire, and I want it fast. So I'm not going to do a bow and drill, especially when it's raining and snowing. Good luck. A lot of the survival shows, if you notice when they're doing a bow and drill, they'll cut. They won't show you them actually making the fire. It is prone to failure in my experience, especially when it's high humidity out there. Just keeping it real. Good handle, good guard. No, I wouldn't use a bow drill, the bow divot thing, bearing position, can't speak. Kind of some milling here. That's kind of cool. Detail. How about the sheath? How about this? It is a total win. This sheath freaking rocks. It's made of Kydex. It's perfectly fitted. And for the money you're spending on this knife, which is only $105, which again is a very fair price, it's insanely awesome. BOB definitely got this right. They totally did. They don't have a natural sheath. And again, from what I know, I bet you this is going to be a subject of sore contention amongst the bushcrafting brotherhood, because some will say, no, it's got to be natural materials, it's got to be leather. Others, and I would side with this faction, would say, no, synthetic because it's going to be wet. It won't absorb moisture. It's just a practical thing. I'm with that, and that's what I've always said. Don't get me wrong. I love leather sheaths in certain applications, but in a pure survival bushcrafting application, is it perfect? Is it the perfect material? The discussion will never be resolved, right? This sheath, however, is excellent. It does have a little removable mini sheath for the fire steel, which is included, by the way. Hey, Nutnfancy, would you carry that and use it? Again, remember where I'm coming from, not a bushcrafting standpoint. I would say no, because I always have my own fire kit. And to integrate a bunch of stuff on one knife sheath is just not the way I roll. It isn't. Even as a backup, I have several fire making options with me. I have trioxane, I have lighter, I have flint and steel. The stuff I've shown you, watch my favorite fire starters video that I made, I think a year and a half ago or something like that. It shows them all. Time efficient, TCE efficient ways to start a fire. I would take this whole thing off and make it even lighter. And then it has a whistle. Is that something you use? It sounds like a trolley, like Mr. Rogers. No, I'd take that off too. I have my own whistles. They're going to be the Fox 40s is what I run. And yes, I always do go up there with that. By the way, here's your rotational clip that you can carry. And I have seen these fail on other knives. In other words, you can grab them and brush and bend them. And once that spring steel is bent, it's done. That being said, it's a good way to attach. It's very versatile. It's not necessarily MOLLE versatile. But then again, in POU, I didn't say this is really a soldier knife. Do you know why? Mr. TMP here. Wait, you are so smart. That is exactly right. To strap this on, a 14-ounce, 4.6-inch blade on MOLLE, when the guy's already packing 80 pounds, not super smart. Okay, that's why I didn't even address that. No, I wouldn't do it. Quality, durability. I would say phenomenal. Expect some rust on that exposed edge on the BOB Fieldcraft, says me. Almost guarantee it. Even in a high moisture environment, you will not be able to keep up with it. Speaking from experience. And I've shown lots and lots of hours of footage showing just that. Both in tabletop review form, actual adventures up in the mountains, you just can't keep up with it. Now, you can take your oil of choice here and keep it coated. And I already have some discoloration happening there, some rust spots. Not that that's a big deal. The knife of steel is still very serviceable. It's just to be expected. Quality, though, is excellent. For the money you're spending, I really can't make any improvements on this, including the steel. The edge out of box was perfection. It is a micro relief edge, but then again, that goes back to the bushcrafting intention of the blade. They put it that way. How about competitive options? Well, I really would like to throw a bunch of carbon steel competitive knives on the table, and I just didn't. Well, I got one. Here we go. The much beloved in the Nutnfancy project, Buck Punk. Come on down. Now, this is not a bushcrafting handle, and I mentioned that in a review, how it's very sharp. I actually had to slap that sucker on the belt sander. I actually took the scales off, rounded them, because they had some very sharp transitions on them. I can just imagine how much bushcrafters would hate that handle for hour after hour of use, because again, they're making everything with their knife. You know, supposedly that's the way they do it. No, that handle, maybe not so much, but as a camp knife, the other philosophies of use I've talked about, this is an excellent knife, and it is a strong knife. That 5160 steel that Buck uses is outstanding. Holds an edge. I talked about that. It sharpens readily. It's tough. You can hardly break it. I said hardly. You can actually break it. There have been some hoodlums out there that have broke with a notch. I've seen that. And this also is a steel that will rust on you. But the 5160s, 1095s, for that resilience, you gotta have a trade-off. This is a sheath that comes with a punk. And by the way, even with this big sheath and a bigger blade, notice the blade difference between the punk and the BOB Fieldcraft. The weight is exactly the same, 13.8 ounces. And this is a more capable knife for what I do. For instance, firecraft. It's raining, it's snowing, all the wood's wet, I got to get to the dry wood, I got to split logs. A 4.6 inch blade, as you've been seeing in video, has a very limited span. I'm pretty much relegated to batoning and splitting bigger limbs, small logs. Not that the Buck Punk is that expansive. It's not. You can see we've worked this over hardcore, both in Llama Trek and some other expeditions we did. No, it's not that, but it has more length than the other one does. So, but really, this is falling into the realm of not overall survival knife, but in camp, as a camp knife for me because of its size. And with that in mind, we'll throw out another tops knife. How about the Poseidon Light Traveler? Not a carbon steel blade, but it is an outstanding blade. 154 cm steel, the Poseidon Light Traveler. 11 ounces is all, 130 bucks. Great handle. I think this would be a great bushcrafting handle, from what I know. Flat ground is at the best bushcrafting profile. Here I go back to the bushcrafting philosophy of use. Probably not. They like to Scandi grind. You know, FFG maybe not so much for what they do. How about this one? Oh, hope I have it on the table, dudes. I know I do. Maybe not. Well, I'll throw this one out. This is the outstanding SOG Northwest Ranger. 9.8 ounces, cryogenically treated OS 8. This is a newer one. The used one I gave to Inadvertent Smell for his duty in Afghanistan. I love this knife. 55 bucks or something like that, this knife. Carbon steel? No, it's not. Great comfort, comfort on the handle. And a lot lighter than this. This, to me, is a much more preferred choice in the duties, the camp tasks I've been talking about. Kindling preparation, food preparation, actually skinning game, and a lot of survival tasks. The Northwest Ranger is totally up for. By the way, this is not the stock sheath. This is from Red Hill Kydex. If you go there, the link is on my channel page. Use code Nutnfancy to get a discount. What a sick sheath that is. Oh, dude. Love it, love it, love it. And then we have the SOG Field Pup. And this is even getting lighter still. This is a Field Pup 1. I reviewed this. 5.8 ounces, OS 8. Like 40 bucks. Now again, this is not a bushcrafting review. So, you know, bushcrafters are like, oh, I would never use that to bushcraft. You know, this is wrong with it, that's wrong with it. Okay. But for outdoorsmen like myself, backpackers like myself, we're carrying on our back. This is a great knife. Not the most handsome knife. I mean, if you compare these two knives side by side just on terms of looks, BOB rules, man, right? It's cool looking. Wrapping it up, cool factor. Well, cool factor is an individual thing. It all has all to do about second kind of cool, right? What you like, what turns you on. I bet you, and I could be wrong, but most people who buy this knife are not bushcrafters themselves. They will never bushcraft. They'll never go out and put in the work, the hours, the practice to get good at the craft. But they like that they could, and that this is a knife specifically built from a lot of experience to do just that. In the end, they'll use it like I used it, as a field knife, as a backpacking knife. And its strength is superb. Its steel is superb. Its looks are great. It's got a great handle. Really, the only criticism I can level at it is its weight, of course. It's heavy, very heavy, and with that in mind, for a lot of POUs, there's some other options. It might be better, but it's still an excellent knife. There's a Nutnfancy review. Out.